My people, you don't know what you don't know. Emotional saturation. Emotional saturation. Being emotionally saturated. This is chapter 2 of one of the most powerful books that I've ever written. That's a part of the 1000 for 1000. And I'm going to read through a little bit of this today to assist you with how to establish a dominant mental disposition, what the Bible calls a spirit. And I know, contrary to popular belief, a lot of people have different, constructs, understanding about this topic, as we should. We're all individuals, so we're all not going to agree, but we can agree to disagree. I like that. So when we talk about establishing a ruling disposition, a mental disposition, a mindset, we're talking about, okay, each and every one of us, we have a way of seeing the world. And when we talk about creating a better way of seeing the world, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about that, okay, we have been given, each and every one of us have a mental disposition. We have something that was given to us by God that allows us to be us. Nobody can be us. We're talking about a dominant mental disposition, what I call a spirit. This is a part of the 1000 for 1000, 1000 books, 1000 people, $1,000. This helps you to establish that mental disposition that we're talking about, which is what the church calls a spirit. So we all have a spirit. A spirit is a ruling disposition. So how do we do that, though? How do we establish that? How do we, more than establish it, how do we maintain it? Once we do establish it, how do we establish it? So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to create this dominant mental disposition where you become a single standing column of waves, where you are an individual expression of God on earth, what I call a monolithic frequency generator. We all have that power. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about the fact that your frequency is being projected. So once you master how to project that, that's the key. Because again, you're not living in reality, you're choosing which reality becomes real. But that's the problem. Most people's frequency is too weak because of all of the external distractions that causes inaction. So we're going to jump through, read a little bit of chapter 1, chapter 2, may jump into chapter 3 just a little bit today to give you this ability to understand what I called in another book, a whole other topic, the homunculus code. Now that's, you want to blow your cookies? Wee. Now each one of these books, man, these are powerful frequencies, waves of vibrations. We're talking about, again, how mind dictates results. It's very, very important to understand that your mind is dictating your results for you. My mind is dictating my results for me. That's how we all oscillate and vibrate, whether we know it or not. That's how the you and I verse works. And so the ability for us to tap into and to create this way of seeing the world, this ability for us to really, really, really express, expose, and expand how we are designed. Because each and every one of us, we're all designed differently. No two people are the same. No matter where you go, no matter what you do in life, no two people are the same. And so that's why this is so important.
Chapter 1.
So let's jump,
Singleness of Mind.
break this down real quick.
The architecture of focus and the death of fragmentation. The greatest illusion ever sold to humanity is that power comes from accumulation. More knowledge, more options, more strategies, more desires, more identities, more paths, more voices, more stimulation, more freedom. Yet every ancient system of wisdom, every serious psychological framework, and every legitimate spiritual tradition arrives at the same conclusion. Power does not come from more. Power comes from one.
Singularity.
Singleness of mind is not a motivational concept. It is not positive thinking. It is not discipline in the conventional sense. Singleness of mind is a structural condition of consciousness. It is the state in which the mind ceases to oscillate between competing internal authorities and becomes governed by a single ruling intention. When this happens, the individual stops leaking energy and begins generating force. Fragmentation is the default condition of the modern human psyche. From the moment consciousness awakens, it is assaulted by competing narratives, contradictory values, unresolved emotional imprints, inherited belief systems, and external demands. The mind becomes a parliament of voices rather than a throne.
Boom.
Decisions are debated instead of decreed. Identity becomes negotiable. Desire becomes diluted. Action becomes hesitant. The result is a weak signal. A fragmented mind cannot rule reality because it cannot rule itself. Scripture names this condition with surgical precision. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. This is not a moral judgment. It is a structural diagnosis. Instability is not caused by lack of effort or intelligence. It is caused by divided authority. When the mind entertains multiple ultimate aims, it generates interference. When interference dominates, coherence collapses. When coherence collapses, reality does not respond. Psychology describes the same phenomenon through the lens of cognitive dissonance. When beliefs, desires, and actions are misaligned, the nervous system enters a state of chronic tension. Energy is consumed internally to manage contradiction rather than externally to produce results. The individual feels busy but ineffective, stimulated but stagnant, informed but powerless. The mind becomes a noise generator rather than a signal emitter.
Wow.
Metaphysics frames this as dispersion. Consciousness, instead of forming a standing wave, scatters across possibilities. Attention jumps. Desire shifts. Emotion fluctuates. Identity fragments. The field receives no dominant instruction. Reality mirrors this incoherence with delay, resistance, and randomness.
That's why
Singleness of mind
delay
is
happens.
the reversal of this condition. It begins with a ruthless decision. One desire becomes sovereign. Not the strongest desire. Not the most emotional desire. Not the most socially acceptable desire. The chosen desire. Sovereignty is not about intensity. It is about authority. The mind must recognize one aim as non-negotiable. Everything else becomes subordinate or
Singleness of
irrelevant.
mind.
This is why singleness of mind cannot coexist with fantasy. Fantasy multiplies possibilities. Singleness collapses them. Fantasy asks, what if? Singleness declares, this is. Fantasy entertains outcomes. Singleness installs a destination. The moment a desire is chosen as sovereign, the internal hierarchy reorganizes. Thoughts that do not serve the aim lose legitimacy. Emotions that contradict the aim are no longer indulged. Decisions are filtered. Attention is disciplined not through force, but through allegiance.
Bam.
The mind stops asking permission from doubt. This is not suppression. It is alignment. Neuroscience confirms what mystics have always known. Attention is not passive. It is a resource allocator. What the mind attends to receives neural reinforcement. Pathways strengthen. Competing circuits weaken. Over time, the brain reorganizes itself around the dominant focus. This is neuroplasticity in service of sovereignty. But singleness of mind is not merely neurological. It is theological. In theological language, singleness of mind is the condition required for faith to function. Faith is not belief. Faith is fidelity. It is the refusal to entertain alternatives once a covenant has been established.
Boom.
This is why faith without wavering is emphasized across sacred texts. Wavering is not doubt, it is divided loyalty. A mind that oscillates between trust and fear cannot generate authority. Authority requires continuity. Continuity requires commitment. Commitment requires exclusion. This is why the first day of the 3-day amplification protocol is singular focus. Not because focus is productive, but because focus is purifying. For 24 hours, the mind is trained to recognize how addicted it is to contradict.
So day one, principle one is all about singleness of mind. It's all about what I call focus, which creates direction or discipline. That determines habit or behavior. So everything starts with singleness of mind. And we're going through this chapter one, just a little bit of chapter one of the book that's a part of the 1,000 for 1,000. This book separately sold for $300. You get to pick it up for $1. $1. This book alone is worth the entire purchase price of the entire system. Because without this definite chief aim, you won't be able to establish the dominant mental disposition, which is the issue that everybody has. The main topic for today's message, we want to delve into over and understanding how, again, to do this, how to establish this emotional saturation, which gets into grammar and grammarly, which is language. This, again, dissolves and destroys the spiritual ego, allows you to bypass all of the trauma that has become your mama. Not you personally, of course, but people you know. And so when we talk about trauma, we get into over and understanding this topic of the most important topic, one of the most important topics for me personally is emotional saturation. Because when we talk about changing, manifesting, jumping timelines, aligning your mind with your highest desires, how do you become emotionally invested in something that you don't believe? This is the biggest issue that I've personally come across and that most people that I talk to have. How do you become emotionally invested when you don't really believe, okay, you want to be wealthy, you want to be healthy, you want to be wise, you want to be in a great relationship, but you don't know how you're going to do it. You don't know, you don't have the step-by-step process to establishing it. We break that down in chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2, emotional saturation. Man, this is where the rubber meets the road. Extremely important.
Certainty as a creative force. Singleness of mind establishes authority. Emotional saturation supplies power. Without emotional saturation, focus remains intellectual. It becomes a concept rather than a command. The mind may choose a direction, but the body does not follow. The nervous system remains unconvinced.
Wow.
Reality receives a signal, but it lacks voltage. Emotional saturation is the process by which intention is charged until it becomes undeniable. Most people misunderstand emotion.
Charged intention.
They treat it as a reaction rather than a generator. They believe emotion follows circumstance, rather than recognizing that circumstance follows emotional coherence. This misunderstanding keeps them trapped in a loop of waiting. Waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel secure, waiting to feel certain, waiting for evidence. But certainty does not come from evidence. Evidence comes from certainty.
Boom.
Emotion is not decoration. It is instruction. It is the language through which the subconscious mind, the nervous system, and the field interpret meaning. Thought proposes. Emotion disposes. Whatever is emotionally dominant becomes neurologically prioritized.
Wow.
Whatever is neurologically prioritized becomes behaviorally enacted.
You get it?
Whatever is behaviorally enacted becomes environmentally reinforced. This is why emotional saturation is not excitement. Excitement is unstable. It spikes and collapses. It depends on novelty. It burns energy rather than consolidating it. Emotional saturation is quieter, heavier, denser. It is the emotional signature of inevitability. Certainty does not shout. It settles. Psychologically, emotional saturation is the process of collapsing ambiguity. The human nervous system is designed to resolve uncertainty. When uncertainty persists, stress hormones dominate. Cortisol rises. Attention fragments. The body prepares for threat rather than creation. When certainty is installed, the nervous system shifts into coherence. Heart rhythms stabilize. Breathing deepens. Muscle tension releases. The body enters a state of readiness rather than defense. This physiological shift is not incidental. It is foundational. A body in defense cannot generate. A body in certainty becomes directive. This is why the second day of the protocol is not about thinking harder. It is about feeling deeper. Not emotional volatility, but emotional finality. The feeling that the decision has already been made. The outcome already secured. The identity already assumed. Theological traditions describe this state as faith. But faith has been diluted into belief. Belief is mental assent. Faith is emotional allegiance. Faith is the refusal to emotionally rehearse alternatives. It is the internal posture of this is done. This is why sacred texts emphasize gratitude before manifestation. Gratitude is not politeness. It is emotional confirmation. It signals completion. It tells the subconscious and the field that
why
the
it's
event
so
has
important
moved
we
from
pause this for a
possibility
moment,
to reality.
so that way we can
Metaphysically,
break this
emotional
down.
saturation.
When we talk about that, faith is emotional allegiance. It's when you are emotionally aligned with the thing that you don't even have. That simply means that you're all in. You are emotionally invested. You get to a space and to a place where the emotional finality of the saturation starts to stabilize your mental disposition. It simply means that, sure, the thing has not materialized yet, but emotionally, your outcome is secured. You're in a space where the outcome, and it says that the feeling that the decision has already been made. So the outcome is secured through your emotional saturation and the identity. So it's the frequency and the identity that creates the emotional saturation. So you get the feeling that you already have the thing that you desire. So we're not talking about establishing some type of a fake or phony belief system. We're literally talking about a feeling that is emotionally secure, stable, that changes your identity. You start to identify with the new version of yourself, and then you neglect the old version of yourself. That's true frequency alignment, quantum jumping, or manifesting. The ability to over and understand how to establish this ruling disposition, this mental disposition that I break down inside of this book is one of the most important books that I've ever written, because it really, all I did was just the process that I personally went through. Every time I have to, level up. When you go from 10 grand to 20, from 20 to 30, from 30 to 40, from 40 to 50. Every time you level up financially, or weight loss goal requires a new you, a new version of yourself. The old you cannot contain. You cannot put new wine in an old wineskin. So let's continue as we continue going through chapter 2 of emotional saturation. This is extremely, extremely important.
Metaphysically, emotional saturation stabilizes the wave. A thought without emotion oscillates. It appears and disappears. It competes with other thoughts. Emotion anchors the thought into continuity. It gives it mass. It allows it to persist long enough to organize surrounding conditions. This is why fleeting affirmations fail. They are emotionally underpowered.
Wow.
They are spoken without conviction, repeated without embodiment, and contradicted by deeper emotional states. The field does not respond to words.
Boom.
It responds to coherence. Emotional saturation requires immersion, not constant strain, but repeated reinforcement. The protocol does not demand 24 hours of emotional intensity. It demands intentional saturation periods, 10 minutes, 3 times a day, where the individual enters the emotional state of completion. During these periods, the mind does not visualize outcomes as future events. It inhabits them as present facts. The body is allowed to feel the relief, the stability, the grounded confidence of arrival.
So hopefully you got that. Present facts. So visualization, most people visualize something as out there instead of something being in here. So the key to emotional saturation is to visualize it as a present fact. The fact that you are in it now. You're not saying that it's arriving. You're not waiting. You're not hoping. It's not something it's not the distant future. It's the present reality. So what we're talking about is a disposition that is maintained. You establish this mental disposition. So this book really goes into why emotional saturation is so powerful. Because when you get into a place where you are emotionally invested and emotionally immersed, that's what we get that word in the Bible, baptism or baptismo, which is the ability to take your brain out of your head and immerse your brain into your desire fulfilled. Let's continue.
This distinction is critical. Hope weakens the signal. Certainty strengthens it.
Very, very important. Now, pay close attention to what this part of the
This is
book
why
reads.
emotional saturation cannot coexist with desperation.
Bam.
Desperation is emotional contradiction. It signals lack. It broadcasts urgency rather than authority. Reality does not respond to urgency. It responds to stability.
Man, in reality, the universe does not respond to your sense of scarcity. Desperation is an emotional contradiction. It signals lack. It broadcasts urgency rather than authority. To be successful, you must be emotionally saturated. Your desires, you must be in a state where there's no emotional contradictions. You have to be one with your desires. See, reality doesn't respond to urgency, it responds to stability. That is huge. The emotional state required is calm inevitability. That means that you're in a state where it's inevitable. Your desires, your goals has to manifest. Let's continue. A desire.
The emotional state required is calm inevitability. Neuroscience supports this. Emotional states are not ephemeral. They are biochemical environments. Repeated emotional states condition the brain. Neurotransmitter patterns stabilize. Hormonal baselines shift. Over time, the emotional state becomes the default. This is emotional conditioning at the level of identity. Once certainty becomes the baseline, doubt feels foreign. Fear feels intrusive. Contradiction feels uncomfortable. This is not suppression. It is recalibration.
Recalibration.
Emotionally saturated individuals are often misunderstood. They are mistaken for arrogant, detached, or unrealistic.
I get this all the time.
In truth, they are simply no longer negotiating with uncertainty. They have moved beyond persuasion. They are not trying to convince reality. They are informing it.
Bang.
This is why emotional saturation must be practiced deliberately. The modern environment is engineered to provoke emotional fragmentation. News cycles, social media, unresolved trauma, and constant comparison destabilize emotional baselines. Without intentional saturation, the default emotional state becomes reactive. The second day is a countermeasure. It is the deliberate installation of emotional authority.
Emotional
By the end of the second day
authority.
and the second principle, the individual notices a shift. The desire no longer feels distant. It feels familiar. The emotional charge stabilizes. The mind stops asking how. The body stops bracing.
Very important.
The individual begins to move as if alignment is assumed. This is the emergence of emotional coherence.
So the way that you know that you've done this correctly is when you have emotional coherence. It's when you stop trying to figure out how. The emotional, charge where you are embracing for the inevitable. When you're thinking about what could go wrong. When you know that you are in a state where you've done the emotional saturation, you have emotional coherence. Singleness of mind and emotional saturation. Those two things together takes us to chapter 3 of the book, which breaks down 0 contradictory statements. We'll stop it there. You want to pick up this book. It's included. Again, the book by itself is $2.99. You can purchase it separately if you like. I ain't mad at you. Boo-boo, do you. However, I highly recommend that you get. I have the, we did the Martin Luther King Day special where we did the 4 payments where you can divide the payment into 4 equally monthly payments. I'll still honor that if someone wants to pick that up today, which is January the 20th. We'll extend it one more day. 4 payments of $250 instead of the 1 payment of the $1,000. So you get 1,000 books for $1,000. Very, very, very powerful. This book, Dominant Mental Disposition, How to Create a Spirit, a Ruling Disposition, the 3 steps that allows you to become a single standing column, a monolithic frequency, and to be able to generate a frequency that replaces, again, any scarcity. Brothers and sisters, emotional saturation is one of the most important keys to success when it comes to leveling up and going from one level to another, because you cannot put new wine, a new mental disposition, in an old wineskin and in an old mental disposition. You have to establish a new frequency. And the way to do that is by establishing and maintaining emotional coherence through emotional saturation. This is your boy, Dr. Will Rogers, aka Master Teacher 33. Go to the website, make the payment, $1,000 to get to 1,000 books today. Let's go.